We are now officially live.
Soti everyone, and welcome to our online Dhamma group, which we have every Saturday. And today we are joined by Venerable Dhamma as usual, who's residing in the meditation center in Sri Lanka. So if you're interested in meditation retreats, that's our recommendation. And today we will continue studying the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta commentary by the Venerable Mahasi Sayadaw. And before that, we will take together the 5 precepts. And we begin with the 5 precepts every time because it's an important reminder for the basis of our practice and helps us to prepare our minds for the upcoming study and it's an wholesome thing we always do before we start. We also take refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. That's the ancient way to profess that you are Buddhist, and it's also an important reminder for us to take refuge. Is there someone in the Discord who would like to lead the recitation today?
I would like to.
Okay, thank you, Mila. You may start whenever you're ready.
Aham bante ti saranena saha pancha silani yachami. Dutiyampi aham bante ti saranena saha pancha silani yachami. Tatiyampi aham bante ti saranena saha pancha silani yachami.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Buddhang saranang gacchami.
Buddhang saranang gacchami.
Dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dhammang saranang gacchami.
Sanghang saranang gacchami.
Sanghang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Saranagamanang nititang
Amabante.
anatipata veramani sikhapadang samadhiyami.
Panatipata Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami.
กดินนาดานาเวรมณีสิกขาปดังสมาธิยามิ
Adinadana Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami.
กาเมสุมิจฉาจาราเวรมณีสิกขาปดังสมาธิยามิ
Kamesu Michachara Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami.
มุสาวาดาเวรมณีสิกขาปดังสมาธิยามิ
Musavada Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami.
สุราเมรยะมัญจปมาดัฏฐานาเวรมณีสิกขาปดังสมาธิยามิ
Sura Meraya Majja Pamadatthana Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami.
อิมานิปัญจสิกขาปดานิสีเลนะสุกติยันติสีเลนะโภกสัมปดาสีเลนะนิบุติยันติตัสมาสีลังวิโสทะเย
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Should I go ahead and start?
Sorry, I had some audio difficulties. Did you ask something?
Yes. Should I go ahead and start reading?
Just a second, but thank you. I will just give a short guidance on
Okay,
the
sorry.
reading today. And so we will continue with page 161 on the PDF, 151. I will shortly share my screen, then everyone will see it. Actually, I will do it now. And we are currently at part 6. So we finished part 5 last time. And please remember to read 2 paragraphs each and read slowly and take a pause between each paragraph so we can have time for discussion or questions. And after the reading, there will be a Q&A and time for discussion as well. So you can also be ready for that. Now I'm showing my screen. And yes, I think Martin posted the reading list. Thank you, Martin. So Kiki was the last time. Yes, Lara. Then maybe Bante, do you want to give a recap, or should we start with the first part?
Go ahead.
Okay.
Part 6, delivered on 11th November 1962. Today is the full moon day of November. It used to be a great holy day marked with festivities in central India at the time of the Buddha, being the end of the month, the end of the rainy season, and the end of the year according to the tradition of that time. In Burma, we celebrate the day with the Festival of Lights and paying homage to the Blessed One.
This is an issue, a common issue with translations relating to the past, relating to tenses in general, but this past tense usage in English, that means it isn't anymore. But that's not what he's saying. I don't speak Burmese or know the original Burmese, but I'm so familiar with this problem. It's just saying that in ancient times, it was a great holy day. If you said it that way in English, it would not imply that it still isn't celebrated. But when you say it like this, it does imply that, and that's not what he's implying. He's just saying in ancient times, it was a great holy day marked with festivities. And then he mentions how in Burma we still celebrate it. In Thailand, they celebrate it. Now, the thing is, it's not the 11th of November. It was that year. But it's a lunar calendar. And so if this is the end of the rains, the 11th of November is quite late. This year the rains is starting at the end of this month. So our last, the rains will be starting at the end of July. But then we have the end of August, the end of September, the end of October. So it still won't even be the 11th of November. So 11th of November is quite late. Not sure how that works. But the end of the rains is a big deal in Buddhist culture. And basically what he's saying is that it's been that way since the time of the Buddha, probably even more festive or more highly celebrated in the time of the Buddha. Nowadays there's less religiosity in the world, I guess. Less spirituality, perhaps. More material consumerism. You can still see in rural areas, Sri Lanka, rural people are mostly very devout. Not mostly, but you'll see more devotion. People who live their lives quite pure, relatively speaking, and dedicated. Some you'll see some people much dedicated to Buddha's teaching. They're very thoughtful here up on the mountain. The village people are thoughtful and conscientious. They make a big effort to invite us to stay the rains. So there will be a day where they all come to the monastery and officially invite us to stay here for the 3 months, saying that they will provide for our needs. And I think the implication is that we will teach them. We'll provide for their religious needs. They don't come to practice, well, they don't come to do intensive meditation. They do come to practice meditation of their own.
Today I will discuss the truth of the cessation of suffering, Nirodha Satcha, and the truth of the path leading to the cessation of suffering, Magga Satcha, as taught in the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta. I will now recite the Four Noble Truths. 1. The truth of suffering, Dukkha Satcha. 2. The truth of the origin of suffering, Samudaya Satcha. 3. The truth of the cessation of suffering, Nirodha Satcha. 4. The truth of the path leading to the cessation of suffering, Magga Satcha.
So yes, we're now on the third noble truth. We've discussed the truth of suffering in previous weeks. We've discussed the truth of the origin of suffering, being craving or thirst. Remember with all the stories about how it leads to rebirth, and just basically leads you to get caught up in entanglements. Now we're on the cessation of suffering. So it's what is the cessation of suffering? The fourth will be that which causes the cessation of suffering. So it's like the positive and the negative. The first two noble truths are suffering and its cause. The third and fourth are cessation and its cause. The cessation doesn't technically have a cause, but it's not important.
The truth of the cessation of suffering. Idhang ko pana bhikkhave dukkha nirodhang arya satchang yo tassa yewa tanhaya asesavira ka nirodho jago patinisago muti analayo. This, monks, is the noble truth of the cessation of suffering. It is the complete fading away and cessation of that craving without remainder, its forsaking and abandonment, liberation and detachment from it. The truth of the cessation of suffering is the cessation of craving, otherwise called the truth of the origin of suffering. By virtue of insight knowledge and path knowledge, that craving gets no opportunity to arise and vanishes. It is like darkness being dispelled by sunlight. When path knowledge of arahantship appears, craving has no chance to arise and gets extinguished entirely. With the cessation of craving, the mental and physical aggregates for a new life cannot appear and completely cease to exist. This non-arising or cessation of craving is the truth of the cessation of suffering. Cessation of craving by virtue of arahantship is its complete extinction without remainder and is the noblest form of cessation.
There are inferior forms of cessation, for instance, cessation by virtue of the path of non-returning, which completely extinguishes only sensual craving. Cessation by the path of once returning, which eliminates only the grosser forms of sensual craving. Cessation by virtue of stream winning, which removes the sensual craving that will give rise to rebirth in the lower realms. These cessations are concerned with only partial extinctions of craving and may be regarded as inferior grades of the truth of cessation. Then there is another form of cessation, which comes about through contemplating impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and not self. During the period of contemplation, craving gets no chance to arise, so there is temporary cessation of craving. It may be regarded as partial cessation of craving by means of the partial development of insight. Every time one is engaged in insight meditation, it may be said that one is realizing the temporary cessation of craving.
So there is something missing from this formula. I mean, it's just implied, but and it's in the deeper formula. But that you have to add to this is that the cause of suffering has another cause. it's not the best way to say it, but it's basically simplistically, the cause of suffering has a cause. What that means is it has a catalyst. There's something required for a craving to arise in the first place. So the goal isn't actually to get rid of craving. That's why the goal, not the goal, the practice, the task is not to eradicate craving. The task is to see suffering, because the cause of the cause is ignorance. And the cessation of suffering doesn't primarily come about from the cessation of craving. I mean, it does. I'm not refuting anything here. I'm just saying that practically speaking, based on, you can notice from what the Mahasi Sayadaw says, it's actually the wisdom. Simply seeing things as they are is what eradicates craving. Eradicating craving is what eradicates suffering. So this is all correct. The craving is the cause of suffering, but there's a reason why we crave, or a reason why we thirst. It's a very simple reason. It's not that we've been lazy or that we've made mistakes. Well, kind of it is. It's just simply that we didn't see clearly. We looked at things and saw them as stable, satisfying, and controllable. When you pay closer attention, when you apply mindfulness and have the strength and fortitude of mind to see things clearly as they are, you see that they're impermanent, unsatisfying, and uncontrollable. When you see them like that, craving doesn't have a chance. And that's why he says here, it's like darkness being dispelled by sunlight. That sunlight is insight knowledge. By virtue of insight knowledge and path knowledge, craving has no opportunity to arise. This is important. It's practically important. This isn't intellectual theory. This is something that comes up often in meditation practice, where the meditators try to avoid or shut down or prevent craving from arising, and try to fix their minds so that they don't crave anymore. That's not how it works. Craving arises because of ignorance. If you think about it like that, you can appreciate why mindfulness is so valuable and so important and so effective. Mindfulness doesn't force the craving away. It just prevents it from arising, because it creates the clarity to see those things that you crave are not worth craving. You don't have to intellectualize it or talk yourself out of it. You just have to pay attention. The only reason that we crave, and therefore the only reason that we suffer, ultimately, is through ignorance, through lack of clarity, lack of vipassana jnana. Insight, again, not a great translation. Vipassana just means seeing clearly. So insight is not exactly that. Insight we use in English to mean something a little bit different. But the knowledge through seeing clearly is a good way. You should always, I like to correct this because it's a good way to remind us about the nature of our practice, to remind us just to try to see clearly. Where does knowledge come from? By seeing clearly. So you know what your task is.
Pali texts provide the following exposition of the truth of cessation of craving by answering the question, where may this craving be discarded? Where may it be extinguished? Wherever in the world there are delightful and pleasurable things, there this craving may be discarded, there it may be extinguished.
Here, delightful and pleasurable things means, as explained earlier, the 6 sense doors, the 6 sense objects, and the 6 types of consciousness. For further details, please refer to the text and translation of the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta. Discarding, pahiyati, and extinguishing, nirujati, are alike in meaning. Similarly, giving up or relinquishing, chago, forsaking or rejection, patinisago, release, freedom, and or emancipation, muti, aversion, disenchantment, analayo, all connote the same meaning as cessation or extinction, nirodha.
Analaya is something like lack of interest, lack of dislike, lack of liking. It's not aversion, but he's trying, I don't know what the Burmese is, but we're trying to find a translation that's the opposite of liking something. So we can say in English not liking, but not liking in English also means disliking. So literally it just means the absence of liking. Analaya, because the at the beginning is a negative. Alaya is concern, I think, or something like concern or interest or care. You care about something. Analaya means you just don't care about it anymore.
Should there be a long A, analaya?
Analaya, yeah, I think so. It's in the Pali above, there's a long A, you can see it.
Yes. Somewhere it was.
Muttiyanalayo. This is one of the very, very, very foremost texts, This passage, this is why he recites these. It's because this is core Buddhism, right? The Four Noble Truths. Here we have the passage. Idang kolpana bhikkhave dukkha nirodhang arya satchang yotasa yeva tanhaya asesa viraga nirodho chago patrinisago uttiyanalayo. This is one of the things that you should inscribe in stone. There's a saying, these are the 4 sayings that should be inscribed in stone. The Four Noble Truths. In, where is it? In Sarnath, there's a place that has, there's a temple. I think it's the Mahabodhi Society temple. Right next to the place with the stupa, with the big pagoda. When we went to India, we did the walking around. Those of you who were there can remember. We walked around this stupa 3 times, did walking meditation, kind of interrupted all the other people who were walking around the stupa. It's the big round one, if you remember, in the big open field. Huge, huge round stupa. But right outside that gated area that you have to pay to get in, there's a temple. And they have the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta inscribed in stone. I think they have, I don't know if it's the whole sutta or if it's just part of it now. I think it's the whole sutta. And they have it in like 5 or 6 different scripts. Thai script, Burmese script, Sinhalese script, Devanagari script, Roman script. Cessation of craving is brought about when the meditator becomes convinced of the true nature of impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and not self by noting, seeing. At the moment of seeing, he or she will not be blinded by the delusion of permanence, happiness, and self in the sense doors, sense objects, and sense consciousness. He or she is momentarily free from ignorance, avijja, or delusion, moha. Having seen reality as it is and being free from delusion, no pleasurable feeling arises toward these objects. This is then the temporary cessation or fading away of craving. Through the fading away of craving, attachment, upadana, kamma, and mental formations, sankhara, come trailing after it cannot arise. Consequently, consciousness, vijnana, mind and matter, nama-rupa, the 6 senses, salayatana, contact, phassa, and feeling, vedana, the unwholesome resultants of kamma and mental formations cannot appear. This is how craving together with suffering are momentarily extinguished, which is called momentary cessation or momentary nibbana. Similarly, by noting hearing, smelling, etc., at the moment of hearing, smelling, etc., the meditator becomes convinced of the 3 characteristics with respect to the ear and sound, the nose and odor, the tongue and taste, etc. He or she will be free from delusions of permanence, happiness, or self in connection with these objects. Thus, there will be the momentary cessation of craving and suffering, otherwise called momentary nibbana.
Through insight, which promotes temporary cessation as higher knowledge is developed, nibbana is realized by means of the knowledge of stream winning. The knowledge extinguishes the strong central craving that can give rise to rebirth in the lower realms. The meditator becomes fully liberated from the miseries of lower realms, apaya, and sufferings of more than 7 existences, unfortunate destinies of the central sphere, Dhamma sugati. This is then the extinction of suffering as a result of the extinction of craving. However, it must not be regarded that path and fruition of stream winning takes the cessation of craving as its object of contemplation. It dwells merely on cessation as a result of the complete extinction of suffering inherent in the mental and physical aggregates.
So there's quite a bit in there. Stream winning is an interesting phrase. Most people are familiar with stream enterer, stream entering. Entering or winning are not really the best translation. If you want to be literal, it's more like stream attainment. Is the sotapanna. Apana means like attainment or reaching. I guess in English, what do you do with a stream? You enter it. You don't reach a stream or win a stream. You enter it. That's why stream entering is probably the best, or the most common anyway. Want to be literal, you could say stream attainer, stream attaining. The stream attainer is, the point is that someone who has experienced cessation. So when you practice vipassana after some time, seeing things clearly again and again eventually changes the mind and gives the mind a sense of dispassion, detachment, a sense of independence, and gets to the point where there's just an experience of disinterest, analaya, towards all things, and the mind just shuts off, kind of. Well, it doesn't shut off per se, it's just mind stops reproducing. And so there's an experience, just a momentary or brief experience of cessation as a result of that. It's as a result of seeing the three characteristics so clearly that the mind just says enough, and it just says nothing is worth it, and it just lets go. Because of that first experience, one has entered a stream, meaning they're destined to become an arahant eventually. Well, not just eventually, within the next 7 lifetimes at most. But this is familiar to most of you, I think. But where they will be reborn again is in the sensual sphere, but only in fortunate destinies. So the Sotapanna, generally speaking, will only be born in a good way. I mean, it's not, of course, 100% sure, but almost 100% sure that they're not just going to be born in good places. They're going to be born in a fortunate birth. So born as a human, they will just appear to be blessed in so many ways due to the clarity and purity of their mind. So that's what sugati kama means sensual sphere. Sugati means a good destination. And then he says the path and fruition. So when he talks about path and fruition, we've talked about this before, this is the technical terms for those moments of cessation. The first one is called the path. The first moment in the sequence will be the path, just because it's the one that does the work. And all the rest of the moments are called fruition. The moments have the same quality, it's just the first one has a different name. He's just he's referring to that experience of cessation, which can be many moments long or even up to 7 days.
When Nibbana is realized by means of the path knowledge of one's returning, the grosser forms of sensual craving, together with the suffering of more than 2 existences in the central realm, are extinguished. When the path knowledge of non-returning is realized, subtle forms of sensual craving, together with suffering in more than 1 existence in the fine material realms, rupa loka, or in the formless realms, arupa loka, are extinguished. These are also extinction of suffering as a result of the extinction of craving. In these paths, too, the mind dwells merely on cessation consequent upon the complete extinction of suffering inherent in the aggregates. When Nibbana is realized through the path knowledge of arahantship, all forms of craving and all kinds of suffering are completely eradicated. This is also extinction of suffering as a result of extinction of craving. We can summarize: when craving is eradicated, suffering is extinguished.
So when you read when Nibbana is realized by means, how this works is the paths and fruitions arise in sequence, or in sequence, in order. Let's say not precisely sequence. So what he's saying is that after experiencing Nibbana through the practice of vipassana, one becomes a sotapanna. If one continues to practice, or when one continues to practice, one will again experience Nibbana, realize Nibbana, and eventually that realization becomes the realization of a sotapanna, or of a sakadagami, a once returner. And again, eventually it becomes the experience of Nibbana of a non-returner. It's really the same experience. You have it again and again. Eventually, the clarity is so sharp that it's considered to be another level. That's basically it. There's not actually anything categorically different between the experiences. Experiences are identical, but the consequences are different. It's like cleaning is the same, but the results are different because you do you do more cleaning, and you clean the deeper dirt. That's the point. So a Sakadagami will be reborn in the sensual realms, could be born as a human or in heaven. It will only be one more time. An Anagami won't ever come back to the sensual realms, but even an Anagami, I want to talk about how much time it takes to become an Arahant. Even for an Anagami, they can be reborn in the Brahma realms, but special Brahma realms. They're born in ethereal realms called the Suddhavasa, the pure abodes. And they can, I guess, be there for incredibly long amounts of time before they eventually become Arahant. So enlightened beings are not immediately deleted from samsara. They can live, an Anagami, I think, can live for a long time. I mean, even a Sotapanna can live for up to 7 lifetimes in the sensual realms, but then can go on to the Anagami realms as well, the Suddhavasa as well. This means that their existence is so pure that there's very little in terms of suffering, and very little in terms of craving and attachment.
Which would mean they're able to meet one or many future Buddhas, which makes me also wonder, is that a good goal? I mean, at that point.
Well, in the Suddhavasa, I don't know that there's any. I'm not quite sure how it works. Brahmas and the Suddhavasa are pretty remote.
Okay, thank you, Bhante.
Only when craving is completely eradicated, true liberation from suffering is achieved. Escape from suffering, obtained through other means, is not true liberation, but just temporary relief. In due course, there is the recurrence of suffering. For example, take stretching the limbs to relieve the stiffness due to bending. The discomfort is temporarily removed only to return as tiredness due to stretching. Likewise, stiffness due to prolonged sitting may be relieved by standing up or walking about, only to be replaced soon by fatigue. When one is assailed by hunger, the suffering may be relieved by partaking of some food, but the trouble will start again after a lapse of a few hours. Illness or disease may be cured with suitable medical treatment, but other ailments are bound to arise sooner or later to give trouble again.
There are 4 kinds of suffering. There's dukkha vedana, suffering as a feeling. Dukkha sabhava, dukkha, suffering as a part of life, literally as a part of nature. And number 3, dukkha lakkhana, suffering as a characteristic. And finally, dukkha satcha. So when people see most people only see the first type of suffering. This is how they conceive of suffering. Suffering is a feeling. And so the way of eradicating it is to fix the feeling, no? Avoid the feeling, remove the feeling. You have a headache, take a pill. You have a heartache, take a pill. You have a sickness, find the medicine. There's nothing wrong with taking medicine, of course, but it doesn't free you from suffering. Why? Well, the next step is dukkha sabhava. People who see dukkha sabhava means they appreciate that it's a part of nature. You can't escape it. You get old, you get sick, you die, no matter what you do. You're hungry, you're thirsty, you have to urinate, you have to defecate. Suffering is unavoidable. This hits hardest for people who have calamity in their life, who have great loss or great disruption to their ordinary living, or an accident or an illness or something. And they can't find a solution. There's no medicine for their problem. And so that's where people begin to look towards religion. That's why many people come to practice Buddhism, practice meditation, because they're looking for a way to fix their problem. They've realized that it's not something you can just run away from. And so mindfulness really hits that home. We're not trying to run away from the suffering. We're actually trying to face it, trying to understand it. And the third, of course, is what you get out of the practice of mindfulness is the dukkha lakkhana. You start to see it's a characteristic of everything. It's not this or that experience that's causing us suffering. It's a trigger. It's like everything has thorns, or everything is hot. It has this quality to it. It's not the fault of the thing, and it's not a problem with the thing. Problem with how you hold on to it, that we grasp at it. When you see dukkha lakkhana, that's when your mind really starts to change. Stop trying to run away, and you just stop grasping. You just say, oh, if I just didn't grab at it, I wouldn't suffer. I don't have to try to chase it away. And when you see that clearly, there comes the point where you see dukkha satcha. Dukkha satcha means you see it as a truth. appreciate this is the truth. And that's the moment when one lets go.
So, Bhante, may I please ask a question? So, the relationship between Nibbana and Dukkha Satya. So, I think I misunderstood as I grew up in my own family. I always thought that Nibbana is something that one will reach when one dies. So that's my own, misunderstanding. But slowly, I'm trying to understand it way better. So, so what Nibbana means is that the Dukkha Satya, one reaches Dukkha Satya momentarily or temporarily. Those moments are Nibbana, and as we accumulate many experiences of those moments, that's when we reach Nibbana. Is my understanding now correct, Bhante? Thank you.
Yeah, there are issues with using the word. I mean, you basically hit upon the issue with using the word nibbana because it's not that precise. That's why we don't really use it when we're talking about precision. Oh, no, when we're talking about precise realities, like in the Abhidhamma. When we talk about Abhidhamma, we prefer to use path and fruition. Because path and fruition are referring to moments, and it's just a convenient way. It's not really all that much more accurate. In fact, it can be quite misleading as well and confusing if you don't have if you're not up on the jargon and the technicality of it. But Nibbana is used in different ways. The word Nibbana is used by the Buddha sort of colloquially in some cases. Sometimes it's used to refer to these moments of cessation. Right after you see clearly, then there's a moment of cessation. It can be a long moment, can be hours or days even. It's usually just very, very brief, but can be extended. So it's used to refer to those moments. It's also kind of used to refer to the process of, sort of colloquially, I guess, like just figuratively speaking, referring to the process of letting go. And then it's used as two distinct things. And one is the life of an arahant who is free from defilement. That's called sa-upadisesa nibbana. And what that means is just a fancy way of saying that there's still something left. It's nibbana because an arahant is completely nibbana. It means they're completely free from suffering, or free from craving, but there is still a residual life, means they're still alive. This is about what you're talking about. The other one is anupadisesa nibbana, and that's when an arahant passes away, there's no remainder. Because the physical life is. So what it means is an arahant still has to live their life. They don't just immediately cease to be because they experience nibbana. So it's used, that's in a different way of using the word nibbana, talking about the life of an arahant and the experience after, which is sometimes referred to as parinibbana, right? So an arahant, when they die, that's also called parinibbana, which means complete nibbana. Pari meaning something like complete. But usually when we refer to nibbana, we're talking about these moments of cessation. We're referring to that experience of cessation.
Thank you, Bhante. Thank you.
I mean, it really is the same thing because when an arahant passes away, there's cessation, right? There's no more arising of minds. But the sa-upadisesa nibbana is a little bit different because it's referring to the life of an arahant, sort of generally speaking. It's not pinpointing any one reality, referring to the life, the state of an arahant's mind. They're nibbana, but they're still seeing and hearing and smelling and tasting and feeling and thinking. It's a kind of nibbana, meaning because for that arahant, there will be no more craving arise. So it can be called nibbana as well.
Bandi. So as growing up, they are always wishing people, right, elderly people or monks, or they will wish, may you reach Nibbana when you pass away. So I think my misunderstanding or incomplete understanding of the term Nibbana might have been derived from that.
They really say it like that? What is the Burmese that they say?
That's exactly how I mentioned. May you reach Nibbana. May you be able to reach Nibbana in shorter life terms. So it means that you don't have to go through many lives, but may you reach Nibbana.
That sounds better. That sounds more likely. So they wouldn't say when you die. Nobody would say, if you're dying, say when you die, may you reach Nibbana. I mean, that's more rare. It's not common for people to say that, but what you just said is much more common in shorter lifetime, in no long time, and so on. But the understanding, the acknowledgement is that it's probably still going to be many lifetimes, but may it not be as long as it might have been without this blessing or without this practice that you do or without this goodness that you have. May it be short.
Thank you very much, Bandi. Thank you.
Mostly we don't expect people that when they died, but it is possible. And I could see someone actually making that wish. It's a bit unrealistic to just say that, generally speaking, unless you know the person quite well and you know that they've been practicing quite well and you think when they die. Because when you die, it is a real catalyst for enlightenment. And it is not uncommon for people to become enlightened when they die, as they're dying. One of the common pieces of triggers, I guess, for enlightenment, catalysts for enlightenment. You even had people in the time of the Buddha who killed themselves, and as they were dying, they realized how crazy it was to kill yourself, and they became enlightened as they were dying. So most people, when they kill themselves, they go to a bad place. Killing yourself can be so scary that you just realize, oh, I'm really still very much attached to this. If someone was a very devout practitioner, it just seems, I think it's just a bizarre case, because absolutely when a person kills themselves, they're much more likely to go to a bad place. There's so much aversion in the mind, so many unwholesome states in the mind, that they're not anywhere close to becoming enlightened.
It's quite a long paragraph. Should we continue or stop here? I'm not sure which is a good place. I mean, now I've kind of interrupted anyway, so I think we can stop here and continue next time with this paragraph. So thank you everyone for reading. Thank you, Venerable Dhamma, for your guidance, as always. And now we will slowly move on to discussions and questions. So if you have anything in mind that's related to the text and what we have talked about, feel free to use your microphone, and even during the Q&A, you're also free to maybe ask a follow-up question, or if you have anything that might be relevant to add. And so everyone is invited also to post their questions in the chat. We encourage, of course, Buddhist questions related to practice, to our study, and practical questions that come from a sincere place. So we have a tier system, and the most important questions, according to our opinion and experience, will be put at the top. And that's how we work.
Bante, I have a question. You mentioned early on at the beginning that after the monsoons are over or before the monsoons, there is a tradition that the Sri Lankan villages will come and do some kind of a ceremony. Is that like a formality that they do? Since you're already established in the center, so when they come over, is that like a formality?
Well, it's formal. They do make a formal invitation.
Okay.
It's useful because it's to make clear how many monks there are going to be in the monastery, but it's pretty formal. They have this whole setup, and everything is a bit formal here. Like nothing is overly formal, but there's a formality to things. That's very, very old and very, very traditional. Like they'll put out a carpet for the monks to walk on. They have a special carpet. They'll have umbrellas for like sunshades actually ready. So when the monks come out, they have a sunshade to bring them to the hall. Every time when they get to the hall, they have a little mat made of, I think it's banana leaves actually, cut into strips and woven together. Special mat for us to step on, and then they pour water on top of our feet and wash the top of our feet. And they all say sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. It's very sort of ritual, like you could say ritual in a way. There's nothing wrong with ritual. It's just, I mean, it can be problematic if it becomes the focus, When you're attached to rites and rituals, it's not good. But there's nothing wrong with following tradition and ritual, as long as you understand the purpose and what's really important.
Thank you, Bante.
It does go back to a precedent in the texts where you have stories of monks going to a certain place and the people asking the monks to stay there. Oh, please, you come and stay here. We will feed you and give you a place to stay. And as a result, we will be able to take the precepts and take refuge with you and hear the Dhamma from you. They didn't actually say that to the monks, but they think that this is why we will invite these monks, and as a result, we will get to hear the Dhamma, we will get to take refuge, we will get to take the precepts. And then they go and invite the monks, please stay here, and we will care for you for the rains. If you know of a monk, this is a tradition. You can invite them to stay with you for the rains. They can decline, and they often did even in the Buddha's time. But it is a traditional thing to do. They didn't really do it in Thailand, as far as I saw. Not in the same way anyway. Maybe they did. It's been so long now that I think of it. I don't think it was ever done as formally as they do it here.
Do they end the rains with a ceremony, like a ritual, and also?
Well, the monks have their own things. We have our own things to do for entering the rains, for exiting the rains. Lay people aren't so much involved at the end of the rains, I don't think. They may have some robe offerings. So there's robe offerings at the end of the rains, and then there's the big one for them is the katina. Most people are more involved with the katina ceremony. Katina is so big here. It's such a, I mean, it's not as big in terms of like scope as in Thailand, but it's so important here. Sometimes they'll have elephants involved with katina. Katina is when the monks take all the robes all the cloth that they have gained from the rains, and they make at least one robe out of it. It harkens back to the time of the Buddha, so it's been a tradition since then. It's a big deal, and all it takes is one robe, or enough cloth even to make one robe. But the people giving that cloth will make a big deal out of it. When they ask, they'll gain the opportunity to do it, and so they will be the sponsor for the katina. They will carry that robe from their house, and they will parade it to the monastery from their house with music, with drums, beating of drums and horns, and sometimes even elephants. The last day of the rains, I don't think is as, I don't remember what they did here. Maybe Siri Chando remembers. I don't think there was much.
Thank you.
The katina is at any time, could be any time from the last day of the rains till the 1 month after that. So there's a period of 1 month where it might be one day, whatever day. The monks choose the day.
I don't recall drums or elephants. At another monastery,
I'm talking about
to,
those are for the katina, but for the katina there can be all of those things. But for the last day of the rains, I'm not sure that there's much. There's certainly none of that.
I think you're right, Bhante.
And the last day of the rains is the poya, the full moon. The first day of the rains is the day after the full moon. So it's not a day that people normally come to the monastery. They come, I think they come anyway, or else they come on the poya. No, I guess they come on the poya and full moon, which is the day before the rains, which is Asalaha Puja. Asalaha Punami, the full moon of Asalaha. They will come to the monastery on that day and invite us to enter the rains the next day, I think. It's something like that. But the last day of the rains is also the full moon day, so they will come to the monastery anyway. And I guess they do come. There is a lot of people that come on that day, and there is something. I can't remember what it is now, but there may be offerings. There may just be paying respect and asking forgiveness and so on. There is something on the last day, I guess. Certainly the monks have our own things to do. Certainly would be a good day to go to a monastery or a Buddhist center if you know of any. Have one in your area. If you like, if for those people who have Buddhist temples, Theravada Buddhists, they call them temples in your areas, because they're all throughout the world. If you can't get in touch with them, like if you just feel like they're a little bit closed off, or it's hard to make a connection, or you feel like there's not much going on, if you learn what all the holidays are, you still will find large groups of people at most of them, and large gatherings where, for the most part, outsiders are welcome if you're sincere and interested in Buddhism. And so if you can find out when those days are and contact the monastery or find a way to connect on that day, you can often find a really great community of people. They don't come together every day, but on those days, especially in foreign countries, in those days they really will come together in large groups sometimes. So the day before the rains, Asalaha Puja. It's big in Thailand and Laos and probably Myanmar as well, Burma as well. Not so big in Sri Lanka. And then the same with the last day of the rains, the full moon. Good days to go to the monastery.
Bhante, I would like to present to you our first question that we have on our spreadsheet. The question is, when I do this meditation, there is always something going on in my mind. Thinking, distracted, feelings like sad and happy. Should I keep noting these, or after some time, go back to rising and falling?
You should note them and then go back to rising and falling. And try to keep it simple. Don't make it complicated. If there's many things, you can note distracted, distracted. Remember, you're not trying to fix everything. You're not trying to make it something different. You're trying to change the way you look at it by facing your experiences. So just face them. Whatever you experience, just face it, see it as it is, and then try and go back to the rising and falling again.
Here's the next question, Bhante. If suffering doesn't come from experiences, does it then come from attaching to those experiences in our minds?
Basically, that's one simple way of putting it. It's because you heard me say there's 4 types of suffering, but it can even be more complicated than that. It depends what you mean by suffering. And the problem is the English word suffering makes you have to answer your question with a yes. Yes, that's the truth. Things are what is experiences. Suffering doesn't come from experiences. You suffer when you attach, right? But the word we're using, the Pali word is dukkha. And the truth of dukkha is that all of those experiences are dukkha. So if you translate it as suffering, it sounds like you're saying that experience is suffering. Experience is to suffer. It's almost accurate, and all it means, what's accurate, what the truth is that experiences are worthless. There's no value to them. One single experience has no meaning, no purpose, no value. But why it causes suffering is because we ascribe value to it. We think of it as being valuable. We think of it as having meaning, purpose, right? When pain arises, we have purpose. Our purpose is to get rid of the pain. We think of the pain as evoking some kind of purpose to get rid of it. When we experience a pleasant sensation, a taste, for example, we have purpose. The purpose is to get that taste as much as we can. We hold on to things that we get, right? We give things purpose and meaning. Calling them dukkha is saying they have no purpose. They cannot satisfy you. That's why we translate as dukkha as cannot satisfy you. You call them dukkha, you're saying they're not sukha. Sukha is not there. Happiness is not in that. That experience cannot lead you to happiness. If it's pain, you cannot get led to a point where that pain never arises. And you cannot find happiness just because it does go away. I mean, it's not true happiness because the pain was never the problem in the first place. The problem was the disliking of the pain. And if you feed the disliking of something, you just dislike it more when it arises, or you dislike more as a general rule. And the same goes for liking. If you like things, then you just want them more and you need more to make you happy. And you're not happy unless you get those things that you can't control. So dukkha is in everything, but it's not really suffering. It's just causes you suffering when you attach to it. So yes, the attachment is what causes the suffering. It's not even attachment. It doesn't even require attachment per se. It only requires the instigator, that which leads to attachment, which is craving or grasping at.
Bhante, here is the next question. I have a recurring thought of a being whom I feel I want to save. What is the best way to navigate through this phenomenon so that the idea of leaving them behind won't hinder my own progress?
You don't have to leave anyone behind. don't have to stop wanting to, you don't have to stop yourself from wanting to save them. All you have to do is face the experiences. So if you want to save someone, well, that's a wanting. Wanting. When you're worried or afraid that you won't save them, you have to note the worry and the fear. When you wish well for the person, you can note that, but wishing people well is a meditation in itself, and it's a wholesome thing, so not too bad. Helping other people is a big part of the practice. And the Buddha said he wanted us to not see the distinction. He said, when you help someone else, you help yourself. When you help yourself, you help others as well. Not really any distinction, per se. I mean, the best way is to help yourself, but it's also the best way to help others. So it's not really distinct. The best way to save those people, the people around you, is to save them from you, save them from your ignorance, and save them from their own by gaining the wisdom to be able to help them, So if you help yourself, you can help others as well. You do immediately help others as well.
Bhante, here is the next question. Sometimes I feel very compulsive about noting in daily life and quickly get overwhelmed by it. For example, I wish to note every change in position of sitting, etc. But sometimes, for instance, I can eat too, and I don't know what I should note then. I then quickly abandon daily noting because of it. Do you have any advice on how to not overdo the daily life meditation and do it correctly?
So you have to focus more on the hindrances. You're hinting at the fact that there's hindrances involved. The wishing is the problem. And then why do you abandon? You don't quickly abandon because of what you're saying, you're missing something. You quickly abandon it for some other reason, and that reason is the hindrances. You dislike it, you're frustrated by it, you're worried about it, you're afraid of it, you doubt or unsure about it. Those are the hindrances. They're what make your practice difficult. They're what prevent you from progressing. Make sure you note them first. That's your real problem. Not that there's overdoing it. I mean, it's not the overdoing it, it's the wishing, You wish to note everything. Try not to make it try not to use too complicated of a narrative. Like compulsive. People talk about obsessive compulsive disorder. And it's not fake. It's not like I'm accusing them of making something up. It's made up of fundamental experiences. Wanting is a big one. Frustration, worry, fear, all of these things. And that's what's real. So try and stick with the very basics in the Satipatthana Sutta. you read our booklet on how to meditate, it's got some very basics about what makes up experience. Try to stick to those basics if you can. What you should note is what's clearest. I mean, it's a very simple instruction. Is just note whatever's clearest. You don't have to go much deeper than that. It's not complicated. But the difficulty is definitely from the hindrances.
Ante, here is the next question that we have. When craving arises due to eye contact, how can we eradicate the craving? Do we acknowledge it in our mind by saying it in our head and trying to stop the craving by sidetracking it? Or should we do something else?
Yeah, well, as I mentioned before, you're not trying to stop the craving. You're certainly not going to try to stop it by sidetracking it. But Mahasi Sayadaw explained this, he described it pretty clearly. Have you read our booklet? But a booklet also explains it in its own way. But acknowledging in the mind is not for trying to stop it or trying to sidetrack it. You should even note the craving as wanting. We don't eradicate the craving, and eradicating the craving shouldn't be your focus. Your focus should be on seeing suffering clearly. In other words, seeing the things that you experience clearly, to the point that you realize that they are not worth clinging to. When you see them in that way, even momentarily, as Mahasi Sayadaw said, there will be a momentary cessation of craving. It comes about because of wisdom. So don't focus on eradicating craving, focus on cultivating wisdom. Craving cannot arise with wisdom. And that's why he used the simile of the darkness and the light, because when you have darkness in a room, you don't have to go around trying to chase out the darkness, right? All you do is turn on a light. And when you turn on a light, the darkness can't exist. This is why the Buddha uses the words abhijja vinaye sikkhaṃ. It says, no, not abhijja. Vineya loke abhijja domanasang. That's what I'm thinking of. Vineya loke. We practice mindfulness, vineya, to dwell having given up greed and anger in the world. Why does he say greed and anger and not delusion? Because delusion can't exist with mindfulness. It's already gone. Delusion is the darkness. So our targets are greed and anger, but we target them by turning on a light. When you turn on the light, all the evil, all the rotten stuff can't exist. Like you shine the sunlight down and it disinfects.
Bhante, here's the next question. I tend to overcomplicate things. So, how could we simplify the teaching of the Buddha in practice? Is keep the precepts, know every time you can, enough? Do we need something more?
The only thing you need besides that is right view. And it's not a deep or profound right view. But you do need a basic understanding of right view. And the Buddha said it as, if you know that nothing is worth clinging to, and it doesn't mean know for yourself having become enlightened, but you've heard that and you acknowledge that that is the point. Why we're doing what we're doing is because nothing is worth clinging to. If you understand that as theory, that's enough to begin to practice. In other words, you know that's the wisdom we are seeking. That's the truth that we are seeking to discover. Because that puts you on the right path. If you just keep the precepts and sit down to practice meditation with no direction whatsoever, you're much more likely to get it all wrong, or get lost, or get discouraged, or wonder why you're doing it. But at the very, very least, you have to know, having heard and having accepted as provisionally the truth of what you are seeking to discover for yourself, is that nothing is worth clinging to. No Dhamma is worth clinging to, worth relying on, worth depending on. Sabe Dhamma nalang abhinivesaya.
Here's the next question, Bhante. Why am I addicted to the sense pleasures of worldly life?
Mostly habit. Comes about over time. And it comes about due to ignorance. It is facilitated by ignorance. You'll see this if you start to practice mindfulness. As you practice mindfulness, you'll see more clearly, and you'll see there was never any valid reason to crave for sensual pleasure. It just melts away. It just seems it's like it was never there in the first place. But another thing I would say is you don't need to concern yourself with why. This isn't a useful question per se. It isn't a very useful question. It's more useful but it's a common question. It's not unreasonable that you should ask this, but it's more useful to just focus on the fact that you are. To focus on not even that. To focus on the reality of being addicted. Focus on the momentary experiences of addiction. That's all you need. You don't have to consider why you're addicted. Why is never really important. But practically, anyway. Intellectually, we have all these theories we can explain and talk about, but that's just intellectually. What does that even do? Not just, it can give you confidence, it can give you direction, but it can't give you progress. It can't bring you closer to the goal.
Here's the next question, Bante. When I meditate, I get scared sometimes because the peace is there and it makes worldly goals less important. Do you have any advice?
You start by noting the fear, of course. But it's true, meditation, mindfulness won't make you more productive in society per se. It won't make you more ambitious in terms of attaining worldly goals. It certainly will, generally speaking, make you more productive. Much easier to be productive if you're mindful. It will help you with study, it will help you with work, it makes everything more bearable, more tolerable, makes you more patient, makes you more wise, makes you smarter even, generally speaking. It's all around great for the mind. I guess I would say just for you, just note the fear, start there. Worry, fear, doubt. Suffering comes from the hindrances. You can keep in mind the fact that even if you do lose your job, lose your money, lose your family, lose your house, it's still just seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, feeling, and thinking. And it's very much tied up with karma, so you're not really ever in any danger of becoming completely destitute unless somehow you were a terrible person in a past life, in which case you don't really have to worry about it. It's going to come and go like everything else. And kind of let go, You don't have to be too hard forcing life to be just the way you want it, or stable, or satisfying, or controllable. You don't have to strive too hard for money or riches. Doesn't mean you don't have to work. And mindfulness helps you work, but you don't need worldly goals or ambitions.
Bhante, here's the next question. I have been meditating and my mind has changed drastically. I no longer hold contempt or anger towards people and am not as delusional as before. However, I haven't put much attention into learning sutras or the Dharma. Should I start studying them? Any advice on where to start?
Well, you can start by reading Mahasi Sayadaw's stuff. Because he talks about the suttas, he talks about the Dhamma, so it's a great place to get advice or to get a sort of general sense of where to look in the suttas. Like having a teacher like that, having someone that you can read, read his texts, read his books, it's a great place to start. And a lot of his stuff is for free in English on the internet. So there's that. Yeah, certainly you can just read suttas, of course. One thing I recommend is what I always recommend is to keep it proportionate to how much you actually practice. Like, I don't know if you've even done our at-home meditation course, but in our tradition, in our group, in our community, that's where you'd start. You'd start by doing the at-home course, and if you had time to do it, if you didn't have time and wanted to just come to our center, you can just come to the center right away. But eventually you'd do an intensive course at our center or another, multiple intensive courses. And if you're doing intensive practice, then, after that intensive course, it can be great to do some significant study of the Dhamma. Just keep it proportionate. If you're only doing like an hour a day, it's not worth it to do too much study because you still haven't gone very deep into it. If you do our at-home course, then you can start to study as well. If you do intensive course, then really you can start to put some effort into learning some of the teachings with great depth and breadth.
Bhante, here's the next question. If one is going through depression and anxiety and taking medicine to treat these, as well as using marijuana to keep them calm, what would be your advice to this person if they want to start their meditation practice and get their mind and life straight? Please help.
Stop trying to keep calm. Stop trying to keep things calm. Stop trying to fix the depression and anxiety. And learn to separate causes from their effect. So there is depression and anxiety, but there's also physical effects. And you have to be able to separate those out, or else you'll think that the physical effects are the anxiety, they are the depression. And that makes it harder to treat, harder to face. As the physical can last beyond the mental, and then it triggers more mental, triggers more physical, it becomes a feedback loop. But the basic principle, probably the best and most important for you, is to stop trying to keep things calm. Calm is not the goal. It's not the focus. Calm is just another experience. If there's calm, you have to note it, just as you would note anxiety. I don't know if you've read our booklet on how to meditate. That would be a good place to start. And if you've done that, you can consider to take the at-home course. And during the at-home course, it's imperative that you stop taking drugs. Yeah, would be a great way to begin to change the way you look at things and stop needing calm. Start being able to face whatever you experience, even if it's not so calm. The problem isn't your experiences, it's how you relate to them, how you react to them. The problem is the lack of wisdom about them, the lack of familiarity, the lack of understanding about their nature that leads you to get triggered by them and upset by them and so on.
Bhante, here's the next question that we have. When explaining meditation, it's easy to say to note thoughts, emotions, and feelings, but then I would omit dhammas. Is there a simple way to explain that to beginners or kids?
Well, I have a video on teaching, a set of videos on teaching meditation to kids. I find the simplest way to describe the four satipatthana is in 5 sets. And that's what I did with the kids' videos. The first is the body, so that's pretty easy to teach. The second is feelings, pain, pleasure, calm. Still pretty easy. The third is mind, thinking. It's the easiest. It's just thinking. Doesn't matter past, future, good, bad. I mean, for the purpose of teaching anyway, it's just thinking. And the fourth is the hindrances or emotions, right? Or states of mind. Basically, emotions is a good word. They're not all exactly emotions, but how you feel in the mind, like liking this. I mean, the 5 hindrances, but if you present them as emotions, liking, disliking, but also drowsiness, distraction, worry, doubt, states of mind. And the 5th is the senses, so seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, feeling, thinking. Those are the Dhammas, because those are the first 2, and really the most practically important Dhammas are the hindrances and the senses.
The next question that we have, Bhante. Can you give any advice on how I can use extreme depression as a mindfulness support? I would hope to transform it.
I don't know what you're hoping for. Extreme anything is a problem. Someone who has extreme states of mind is going to definitely have a harder time than someone who doesn't have them. You can't just transform it. It's not a mindfulness support, it's a mindfulness hindrance. There's nothing supportive about depression. So it's important that you realize that and acknowledge that and appreciate that is a difficult thing. It's not transformative, it's not subjective, it's not susceptible to transformation. The lucky thing is you don't have to fix it. Right? Mindfulness isn't about fixing things. Your focus is not on transforming or fixing or changing or anything. Your focus is on seeing clearly. So what you call depression is actually just moments of experience. Try and focus on those moments of experience. There's going to be many different kinds of moment. And it's those moments that you should be focusing on, not to fix them or change them, but to understand them. That's all you have to do, really. It's quite simple. It's not easy, but it's quite simple. But yeah, if you have extreme depression, that's just going to be a challenge. There's no way around it. There's no gimmick or way of transforming it. It's only facing it.
Here's the next question, Bhante. Since I still find it hard to maintain discipline to meditate daily, what is your advice for me to be mindful throughout the day? Should I try to maintain a rhythmic breath?
No, absolutely not. Rhythm is bad because rhythm makes reference to past and future. I don't know where you got the idea of that, but there are other meditation traditions that don't concern themselves with just the present moment, so that's fine. But yeah, certainly not in mindfulness. I don't know what you mean by rhythmic breathing. I don't know if you've read our booklet on how to meditate, but that would be a good place to start if you're interested in how we do things or what we're working towards. And yeah, throughout the day, just try to take whatever you experience as your object, mostly the 4 postures of the body. So walking, standing, sitting, and lying. Throughout the day, you're going to be in one or another of these postures. Try and use them as objects of mindfulness. But it explains this in the booklet. If you read our booklet, that's a good place to start. That's what I would recommend.
Bhante, here's the next question. When I learn about all the realms and other worldly things in Buddhist circles, it sometimes makes me wonder if these are true or if they are cultural additions to the history of Buddhism.
That's not a question. Okay, I guess it's implying a question, but it's just a statement. To which I would respond, say there's a wondering, and go back to more important things. Like the present moment.
Bhante, here's the next question. Is Vipassana jhana more sukha, pleasurable, than romantic love?
I don't know how to answer that. I'm not going to answer that. It's too much. There's too much involved there. I don't know why you're asking this. But you may have a valid reason for asking it, but you should focus on that reason. Why are you asking it? Get a little bit clearer about what you're really interested in asking.
Bhante, that's actually all the questions that we have prepared for today, so we will end a little bit early.
Well, I can address the last question then, I guess, a little bit. We can talk about some of the topics anyway. It brought up a lot, right? Romantic love. What is romantic love? Vipassana jhana. But it sounds like this person is concerned because, or maybe even a little bit skeptical, having a hard time grappling with the idea of practicing vipassana when romantic love is so pleasurable. We all know that romantic love can lead people to commit suicide, right? So it's not all flowers and puppy dogs. But romantic love is the love or romantic pleasure is the upside of samsara. It's the attractive side. But there's no way to engage with it that doesn't make you dependent on it. There's no way to engage in the sense of enjoying it, let's say. Because enjoyment requires liking, which inevitably leads to craving, to clinging, attachment. And it's habit forming, how addiction forms. Once you're addicted, then you can't stop, or else you go through withdrawal. Because there's always a finite amount of pleasure, it's not sustainable. In fact, it's not just not sustainable, it sets you up for great anguish to the point where people will kill themselves. Will kill themselves because they can't get what they want. Whereas with mindfulness, it's the opposite. You become independent, It doesn't matter what you experience. You would never kill yourself over anything because you would never even get upset over anything. So the happiness is incomparable. It's like night and day. It's like you thought you were happy, but you were just stumbling around in the dark and you didn't even realize it. And then the light turned on and you just realized, oh, I was just bumping into things. I didn't really see clearly. Right, that's all. I'll stop there with that. And express my appreciation. Well, thank you to everyone who took part in this group, all the people who joined the Discord voice group and help with the reading and have comments and questions. That's always great. Thank you to those who worked hard to make this session possible, organizing the questions, organizing the broadcast, running the broadcast. All of our volunteers, to the board of directors who keeps the organization running, especially Austin, who has the brunt of all the secretarial and financial work. But he's now helped. Adder's back, so Adder's helping again. Everybody's doing something. Everybody's helping out. I appreciate all that, because it's all for a purpose, It's all for the Buddha Sasana. We are a part of keeping the Buddha Sasana alive, keeping the teachings of the Buddha available to the world, right? We are part of that. We are doing that. Very small part, but we're doing something to bring the teachings of the Buddha to the world. And anything we can do to facilitate that is admirable, worth doing, and worth praising. So much praise to everyone involved, much appreciation. Thank you for your continued interest and support for Buddha Sasana, which is the most valuable thing we have in this world. Incomparable. And most importantly, the appreciation for the good that it does to you. Not just good for us and thank you, but also good for you, and are rejoicing in the fact that everyone who comes out to these sessions is bettering themselves and is going to be happier and find greater success in their lives, to the extent that they cultivate wholesome states of mind as a result of these sessions. They're going to find greater peace, happiness, and freedom from suffering. So it is my wish to all of you that through the practice of morality, concentration, and wisdom, the practice of goodness and this abstinence from evil, the cultivation of mental development, on this occasion, along with all good deeds you've done in the past, in this life and in past lives, and all along with the great power of the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, may the power of all of these things protect you, keep you well, keep you free from suffering, free from pain, free from sickness, free from danger, free from fear, free from enmity, free from loss, free from calamity. May you all live happy, healthy, long lives with the strength to face whatever challenges come your way. May you have minds that are dedicated to the cultivation of good things and the training for your own betterment and your own mental development on the Buddha's path towards the realization of the path, fruition, and Nibbana. May you all find the path of fruition and attain Nibbana in no long time, and not too many lifetimes. Sadhu.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Sadhu,
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 sadhu, sadhu.
sadhu.